My name is Tariq, and even though I am only 11 years old, my life has been filled with things I still struggle to explain. People in my village know me simply as the son of Imam Kareem, the respected teacher who leads prayers and teaches the Quran. Everyone sees me as the boy who memorizes verses quickly, obeys instructions, and follows the rules of our faith. But no one knows what has been happening to me since I was 3 years old. Before I could speak clearly, before I even understood the meaning of dreams, something began happening at night. I would fall asleep like any normal child, yet my nights were never quiet. I kept seeing the same bright figure. He always appeared in clothes that looked like light itself. Even as a small child, I didn't feel afraid. His presence made me feel warm and safe, as if nothing bad could ever reach me. I did not know who he was at first, but each time he appeared, I understood more. Over the years, the dreams became stronger. Whenever he appeared, everything around us would become calm. He would reveal things to me gently, teaching me without harshness. Sometimes he let me know that he was watching over me. Sometimes he helped me understand things about myself that I could not talk to anyone about. And as I grew older, I began to know without being told that he was Jesus. I kept all of this inside. I never told my mother. I never told my father. I never told my friends when we played in the dusty streets or studied together at the Islamic school. Something deep inside me always held me back. It was not fear. It was more like a quiet voice in my heart telling me that the time to speak had not yet come. So I carried these dreams in silence, even as I memorized the Quran and followed every lesson my father taught. During the day, I lived like every other boy in the village. But at night, the dreams continued, and Jesus kept visiting me. He would let me know things about peace, kindness, forgiveness, and truth. He helped me understand that love was greater than fear and that his presence in my life was not an accident. I did not know why he chose me, or what it meant for my future. All I knew was that he was real to me in a way I could not explain. Even when I tried to forget the dreams, they stayed with me. When I walked to school, I remembered them. When I prayed with my father, I felt his presence. When I sat alone in the corner of the house, I sensed that he was near. It was as if two worlds were walking beside me every day, the world everyone could see and the world only I knew. Now, looking back, I realized that these secret dreams were preparing me for a day I never expected. A day when my whole village would see the Jesus I had been seeing for 8 years. But at that time, I was just a child living with a secret I did not understand. Everything in my life began to shift the year my father fell ill. Before then, our house was always full of people. Men came to seek advice, mothers came asking for prayers, and children came to learn from him. My father's voice was strong, and his steps were firm. People respected him deeply, not only because he was an imam, but because he cared for everyone who came to him. Then, when he turned 51, something strange began happening to him. At first it looked like normal tiredness. He would return from the mosque holding his back, saying he needed to rest. But with each passing week, his strength kept fading. His legs became weak. He started walking slowly, dragging his feet. His breathing became heavier, sometimes sounding like he had been running when he had only been sitting. Soon he could no longer stand for long prayers. Then he could no longer climb the short steps of the mosque. In a few months, he could not go to the mosque at all. People became worried. My mother tried every possible treatment she heard about. Doctors examined him, gave him medicines, and assured us they would find a solution. But nothing changed. Scholars came to recite over him. Herbalists gave their mixtures. Travelers brought special oils. Still, nothing improved. For years passed like that. For long years. I watched the strongest man I knew become unable to lift himself from the wooden bed he now stayed on day and night. Sometimes I would sit beside him and feed him soup because he could not hold a spoon. His voice reduced to a whisper. His eyes looked tired, as if hope was slowly leaving him. Our home became quiet. People still visited, but instead of seeking his wisdom, they came to check on him. Some whispered outside that he might never recover. Some believed our village would need a new imam soon. The atmosphere around us became heavy, as if sorrow had settled in every corner of our house. During those difficult years, I felt two things at the same time. I felt the pain of watching my father suffer. But I also felt the presence of Jesus growing stronger inside me. Many nights, while everyone slept, I sat beside my father's bed and silently prayed in my heart. I did not pray in the way we were taught. I prayed in the simple way Jesus had been teaching me in my dreams. I would ask him to help my father, to heal him, or at least give him peace. Sometimes, during those quiet nights, I sensed him letting me know that he was aware of everything happening in our home. He made me understand that the sickness was not the end of my father's story. But he did not tell me when or how things would change. So I waited. I continued praying secretly, trusting the one who had been appearing to me since childhood. I didn't know that the time for all these silent prayers to be answered was much closer than any of us imagined. I didn't know that one day the whole village would gather, and my life would change forever. The morning everything changed started like any other, but the air felt unusual. People in our village walked faster than normal. Women whispered among themselves. Men gathered in small groups, talking with serious faces. I could tell that something important was about to happen even before my mother explained it. That day, 68 families from our village and the nearby settlements were coming together. Many imams, sheikhs, and respected men were arriving from different towns to discuss my father's condition and decide what would happen next. My father had been sick for 4 years, and many believed a new leader needed to be chosen. The meeting was meant to be peaceful, but everyone could feel the tension beneath it. I stayed at the edge of the crowd, close enough to hear but far enough not to be noticed. Even as a child, I understood that this meeting could change everything for our family. I saw the wooden stage prepared in the middle of the village square. My father lay there on a mat so the leaders could see him clearly. His eyes were closed. His breaths came slowly. He looked completely helpless. Some shook their heads sadly. Others argued quietly about who would take his place. Some blamed spiritual forces. Some said it was fate. No one knew what to do next. While I listened, something unusual began happening inside me. It was like a gentle pull on my heart, a feeling I had known many times before during my dreams. I recognized the presence immediately. Jesus was near. Not in a dream this time, but right there as I stood among the crowd. My hands started shaking slightly. My chest felt warm. I tried to calm myself, but the feeling only grew stronger. I sensed him letting me know that the time I had been waiting for had finally come. I felt him guiding me, making me understand that I should step forward. And then he made something very clear inside me. I was to lay my hands on my father. For a moment, I froze. I was only 11 years old. Hundreds of adults were gathered. Imams, leaders, scholars, respected men. I wondered if I had heard correctly within my heart. But the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger the guidance became. It was not a loud voice. It was a firm knowing that settled into me like a truth I could not run from. I swallowed hard and looked toward the stage. People were still debating loudly. No one noticed me. I felt a deep peace rise inside me, covering my fear like a blanket. It was the same peace I always felt in my dreams. Then something remarkable happened. My feet began moving on their own. I stepped away from the crowd. The sound of people talking grew faint behind me. My whole world seemed to narrow until I could see only one thing: my father lying on the stage. I walked steadily, even though my heart was beating fast. By the time people realized a child was approaching the front, I was already near the steps. Whispers started immediately. Some asked where I was going. Some told me to return. Some thought I was simply going to check on my father. But Jesus had already strengthened my heart. I knew what I came to do. I climbed the stage quietly, with every eye in the entire square now fixed on me. And that was the moment everything in my life and in our village began to shift. Standing on that stage felt like standing in another world. I could hear the crowd breathing, whispering, and shifting, but it all sounded distant. The sun was bright above us, and the wooden boards under my feet felt warm. My father lay only a few steps away from me, still and silent. For a moment, I simply looked at him, trying to understand how I, an 11-year-old boy, could do anything to help him. Some men shouted from below, telling me to come down. Others questioned why I was there. A few older women tried to push through the crowd to stop me, but something held them back. Even I could sense that the air around the stage had changed. The same peace I had felt in my dreams settled over the entire place. It was gentle but powerful enough to still the arguments and calm the noise. I moved closer to my father until I stood right beside him. The whole village watched in silence. My heart beat rapidly, but my mind felt calm. I remembered all the nights Jesus had visited me. I remembered how he made me understand things without speaking loudly. And in that moment, I felt him letting me know that I should lift my hand toward the sky. It felt strange, but natural at the same time, like something I had been trained for since childhood. I raised one hand slowly. A murmur rose from the crowd. Some gasped. Some stepped back. Some stared without blinking. But I did not look at them. I kept my eyes on the sky and allowed the guidance in my heart to lead me. Then I placed my other hand gently on my father's chest. As soon as my hand touched him, something moved in the air, not a strong wind, but a soft, steady wave that made the hair on my arms stand. I did not know how to describe it. It felt like life itself passing through the place. I knew something beyond me was working, and I was simply standing in the middle of it. I began to pray. Not loudly. Not with big words. I prayed in the simple way Jesus had been teaching me since I was small. I asked him to help. I asked him to show these people that he was real. I asked him to do what no doctor, scholar, or healer could do in 4 years. I felt my voice trembling at first, but then a quiet strength filled me from the inside, and my words became steady. Everything around the stage grew still. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. My father did not move at first. I kept my hand on his chest, feeling nothing but his slow, weak breathing. But deep inside, I sensed that something unseen was happening. Jesus had made me understand many times in my dreams that he worked beyond what the eye could see. So I continued praying, trusting the peace that surrounded me. Then, as if the air itself responded, I felt a slight movement beneath my hand. My father's chest lifted deeper than it had in months. His fingers twitched. His eyelids moved. I froze, hardly believing what I was seeing. The crowd gasped loudly. Some people covered their mouths. Others took steps backward. A few even fell to their knees. My father's eyes opened slowly. At first, he looked confused, blinking at the bright sky. Then he turned his head slightly toward me. His voice, which had been only a whisper for years, came out stronger than I ever expected as he tried to speak. And in that moment, I knew the miracle was starting. When my father's eyes fully opened, everything around us seemed to stop. I could still hear the wind brushing across the village square, but the voices of the people faded into complete silence. My father blinked again, slowly, as if waking from a long, heavy dream. Then his breathing changed. It didn't sound weak anymore. It sounded fuller, stronger, alive. I removed my hand gently from his chest, but I stayed close, not sure what would happen next. My father tried lifting his hand, something he had not been able to do on his own for 4 years. His fingers shook, but they obeyed him. The crowd gasped loudly. Some people cried out. Some covered their faces in shock. For a moment, he stared at his own hand as if it did not belong to him. Then he placed that same hand on the wooden boards beside him and pushed himself upward. It was slow at first. His arms trembled. His body wavered. But he continued pushing. Something inside me knew that the strength helping him was not his own. His body lifted, and then, before the entire village, my father sat up on his own. Women screamed. Men shouted to one another. Some people fell to their knees immediately. A few imams stepped backward, unable to believe what they were witnessing. But I just stood there, frozen, watching my father breathe in deeply as if air had returned to him after years of absence. My father looked around, his eyes shining with something I had never seen in him before. He looked at the crowd, then at me. His face softened, and I saw tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. He slowly placed his feet on the ground. The stage grew so silent that I could hear my own heartbeat. He pressed his hands against the stage and tried to stand. I almost reached out to help him, but something in his eyes told me not to. So I stepped back and watched. His legs trembled. His body shook. But then, with a strength that could only have come from God, he stood up. Fully. Completely. After 4 years of lying on his back, unable to move. The crowd exploded with noise. Some shouted the name of God. Some screamed in disbelief. Some cried openly. Children ran forward but were held back by adults who could barely understand what was happening. And right there, on that wooden stage, my father raised his hands slowly toward the sky. Not to steady himself, but in awe. In surrender. In amazement at the power that had touched him. He tried speaking. His voice quivered at first, but then it grew clearer. Stronger. He revealed to everyone listening that he had felt something enter his body like warm fire. Something that filled his chest, straightened his back, and strengthened his legs. He said he knew immediately that this strength had not come from medicine, prayer sessions, or rituals. He said it had come from Jesus. People gasped. Some covered their ears in shock. Some stepped forward wanting to hear more. Others fell to their knees again, trembling. My father turned to me, placed his hand on my shoulder, and told them that Jesus had been visiting me since childhood, and that Jesus had healed him through that moment of obedience. It was the first time anyone in the village heard the truth I had been carrying in silence for 8 years. And it was only the beginning. The moment my father said that Jesus was the one who healed him, everything in the village square changed. The air felt heavier and yet filled with a kind of gentleness I had never felt before. People looked at one another as if searching for words, but most of them found none. Then something unexpected happened. It started with one old man, a respected elder who had lived in our village longer than almost anyone. He suddenly dropped to his knees. His hands covered his face, and he began to cry, not softly, but loudly, like someone whose heart was breaking open after many years. Right after him, a young mother with a baby tied on her back fell to her knees. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She pressed her forehead to the ground, shaking as she cried. Soon, others followed. First a few, then many. And in a matter of seconds, dozens of men, women, and children were on their knees or lying flat on the dusty earth. I watched it happen with wide eyes. I could see people trembling, some trying to speak, but their voices broke. Others lifted their hands quietly, staring at the sky with tears flowing down their faces. Even the imams and sheikhs who had come to choose a new leader stood still, unable to move or speak. The presence covering the place was too strong, too real, too undeniable. One of the elders pressed his hands to the ground so firmly that dust rose around him. He lifted his head and said with a voice that shook with emotion that if Jesus could heal a man who had been sick for 4 years, then Jesus was truly alive and greater than anything they had known. His words spread through the crowd like a spark, and more people began whispering, crying, and surrendering. Another woman, one whom everyone respected for her wisdom, lifted her trembling hands. She let out a cry, saying she wanted to know this Jesus who gave life and restored hope. Her voice carried across the square, and more people responded, bowing their heads as tears ran down their faces. My father stood there, still amazed at the strength in his body. He slowly lowered himself to his knees too, right there on the wooden stage. He buried his face in his hands and thanked God in a way I had never heard him do before. Not in long recitations, not in memorized words, but in a simple, honest way that came from somewhere deep within him. I felt Jesus' presence around me, the same presence I had felt in my dreams for years, but now stronger and filling the whole village. It felt like he was letting me understand that everything that was happening had been prepared long before that day. All 68 families, men with their prayer caps, women with their colorful hijabs, grandparents, teenagers, small children, everyone knelt on that dusty ground. I saw tears mixing with the earth beneath them. I saw hands lifted high. I saw faces filled with awe and wonder. They were not forced. They were not pressured. They responded because they had seen a miracle with their own eyes, and they felt the truth of it deep in their hearts. And on that ordinary sunny morning, in the middle of our small village square, every single one of those 68 families surrendered their hearts to Jesus. It was a moment that none of us would ever forget. After that day, nothing in our village remained the same. News travels fast in our region, especially when something unusual happens. But this was more than unusual. People had seen a man who could not stand, walk, or even sit up for 4 years suddenly rise to his feet in full strength. They had seen a boy place his hands on him and pray with a confidence far beyond his age. And they had seen entire families fall to their knees, overcome by a presence none of them had ever felt before. Within hours, travelers were carrying the story to nearby settlements. By the next morning, people were arriving from places I had never heard of. Some came walking. Some came on motorcycles. Some came in trucks filled with curious families who wanted to hear the story for themselves. Many simply wanted to see my father with their own eyes, to confirm that the man who had been sick for so long truly stood strong again. In those first few days, our home became a place people visited constantly. My father welcomed them, even though he was still getting used to walking normally again. He told them what he felt on the stage, that something warm and strong had filled him, restoring the strength he thought was gone forever. He said he knew deep inside that Jesus had done it. Some people reacted with joy, amazed at how clearly the truth was revealed. Others were confused and unsure what to believe anymore. A few leaders questioned my father, trying to understand how such a thing could happen outside their religious expectations. But even they could not deny that the man who had been bedridden for years was now standing before them, talking, moving, smiling. The village square, which was once quiet except during prayer times, turned into a place where people gathered every evening. Men sat on mats. Women came with their children. Everyone wanted to hear more about the miracle. My father spoke calmly, telling them that he had no power of his own. He explained that he had felt Jesus giving him life again. He spoke in a way that made even the oldest listeners lean in. People asked many questions, especially about me. They wanted to know how Jesus had been appearing to me since childhood. They wanted to know how an 11-year-old boy could stand in front of such a crowd without fear. Some even asked if I had known the miracle would happen. But I told them the truth. I did not know how the day would unfold. I only knew I had to obey the guidance in my heart, the same guidance Jesus had been giving me in my dreams for years. As the story spread wider, some leaders from distant towns came to investigate. They expected to find confusion or exaggeration. Instead, they found unity. They found joy. They found people who were once afraid now speaking with confidence about what they had seen. A few of those leaders argued or tried to disprove the miracle, but they could not change the minds of people who had witnessed it with their own eyes. Something beautiful happened during this time. The families in our village began gathering together in small groups every night, not to repeat rituals, but to learn more about Jesus. They prayed simply. They talked openly. They shared their struggles and encouraged one another. For the first time in our history, people who once argued about small things now supported each other. Love grew among us in a way I had never seen before. It felt as though a silent light had spread through our village, one that brought peace, truth, and a new kind of hope. And I knew, even at my young age, that Jesus had not only healed my father. He had touched our entire community. After the weeks passed and people continued visiting our village, my own life began to change in ways I never expected. Before the miracle, most people hardly noticed me except as the imam's quiet son who memorized lessons quickly. But now, everywhere I went, people stopped me to ask questions. Some wanted to know what I saw in my dreams. Others wanted to understand how I felt the moment I stepped onto the stage. A few simply asked me to pray for them because they believed something special rested on my life. At first, it felt strange. I was still just an 11-year-old boy. I still liked to play, run, laugh, and be with my friends. But inside me, I knew something had shifted forever. I sensed Jesus guiding me the same way he always had in my dreams, helping me understand that my voice and my story now had a purpose that reached beyond my age. People often invited me to sit with them in the evenings. Some asked me to explain how Jesus had been visiting me since I was 3. I told them the truth each time, using the simplest words I could. I said I did not understand everything, but I knew Jesus had always been patient with me, showing me things gently as I grew. I told them that he let me know that he cared for me, and that he cared for them too. Many families who had accepted Jesus began sharing their own testimonies. Some talked about the peace they felt after many years of fear. Others spoke of arguments in their homes that suddenly disappeared. A few said they slept without nightmares for the first time in a long while. Hearing them made me realize that the miracle on the stage was only the beginning of something much bigger. My father also changed. He no longer taught with the weight of duty he used to carry. Instead, he spoke with joy. When he talked about God, there was light in his eyes. And whenever he mentioned Jesus, his voice softened, as though he was speaking about someone he knew deeply. Sometimes he and I would sit together at night outside our house, looking at the stars. He would share with me how he felt during those 4 silent years on the bed, how he wondered if God had forgotten him, and how he understood later that Jesus had been preparing him for something greater. He often placed his hand on my shoulder and told me that God had trusted me with something important. I didn't always know how to respond to that. Sometimes I even felt overwhelmed. But each time those feelings grew heavy, I sensed Jesus reminding me softly that he would guide me step by step, just as he always had. Soon, people from other towns invited my father and me to speak. They wanted to hear how Jesus healed him through a simple prayer from a child. I always felt nervous before these gatherings. My hands would sweat and my heart would beat fast. But whenever I opened my mouth, words came naturally. I shared what happened, not as a powerful preacher, but as a boy who had simply obeyed what he felt inside. And each time I spoke, I saw eyes widen, tears fall, and hearts open. I realized then that my dreams were no longer just memories from my childhood. They were part of my calling, something Jesus had been building in me without me even knowing it. I understood that he had allowed me to walk with him quietly for years so that, at the right time, I could help others find him too. Our village no longer lived the way it used to. People prayed together. They helped one another. They spoke kindly. They forgave quickly. And the love that grew among us became the strongest proof that Jesus was truly working in our hearts. Everything in my life felt new. And even though I did not understand where my journey would lead, I knew Jesus would walk with me, just as he had done since my earliest memories. As the days and months passed, I began to understand more about what it meant to follow Jesus. People still came from near and far to hear my story and my father's testimony. At first, I felt nervous to answer questions, but Jesus continued guiding me. He let me know what to say and how to comfort others, even when I was just a child. I noticed that people were not only coming for miracles, they were coming because they wanted hope. Some were struggling with sadness. Some were fighting with their families. Some had lost faith in many things. I realized that the same Jesus who had healed my father could touch hearts, minds, and spirits in ways that medicine, teaching, or rituals could not. That understanding grew stronger in me with every person who came. I began praying with people openly, something I had only done in secret before. Sometimes I would place my hands gently on someone's shoulder, just like I had done with my father, and ask Jesus to show them his love. Other times, I would simply hold their hand, letting them know that God cared for them and that they were not alone. I saw fear turn into joy. I saw tears turn into laughter. I saw hope blossom in hearts that had long been heavy with sorrow. Through these experiences, I realized that growing in faith was not only about miracles. It was about love. It was about patience. It was about listening and obeying Jesus, even when it felt difficult. I learned to study God's Word quietly, to pray regularly, and to trust Him in everything I did, no matter how small. Each day, I felt stronger in my heart and in my understanding, and I saw that others could feel the same when they opened themselves to God. Even my father, fully healed now, encouraged me to continue walking in this way. He taught me that following Jesus was not only about powerful moments, but about living with faith, humility, and love every single day. He told me that God's guidance was a gift, and I must use it to help others, not to show off or seek praise. As I grew, the village continued to change. People began caring more for each other. Conflicts reduced. Families prayed together. Even the scholars and elders who were once skeptical started respecting the power of God that worked through simple obedience and faith. I began to see that Jesus' love was not limited to miracles. It was in every kind word, every patient moment, every prayer whispered in faith. And in my heart, I felt a strong truth. Jesus wanted me to walk with Him fully, to trust Him always, and to share His love with others, no matter how young or small I felt. I understood that my calling was not to perform miracles for attention, but to live a life of faith, love, and obedience so that others could see Jesus through my actions. Through every visit, every prayer, and every story shared, I saw hearts change. I saw hope restored. I saw families transformed. And I knew that my life would never be the same again. Now, after everything that has happened, I want to share what I have learned. Following Jesus is not always easy, but it is the most beautiful journey anyone can take. I have seen Him heal my father, guide my steps, and show me things I could not understand on my own. But I have also learned that His love is not only in miracles. It is in every small choice we make to trust Him, to pray, and to love others. I have learned that prayer is not just words said out loud. It is talking to God with your heart, even when no one is listening. It is asking for His guidance, thanking Him for what we have, and asking Him to help others. I pray every day, not only for my family and village but for everyone I meet. I have seen that God hears every prayer, even the quiet ones. Studying God's Word is also very important. I try to read and understand it as much as I can, even though I am still young. Every time I read, I feel like Jesus is speaking to me, teaching me how to live, and helping me see the world through His eyes. The more I learn, the more I understand that following Jesus is a lifelong journey, one step at a time. But the most important thing I have learned is love. Jesus showed me that love is stronger than fear, stronger than sickness, stronger than doubt. I have seen families come together, friends forgive each other, and hearts open to God's truth because of love. And that is what I try to do every day, to love others as Jesus loves them, to be patient, kind, and honest, and to help people see the light of God in their lives. If you are reading this, remember that Jesus can come into your life at any age, in any place, even if no one else understands. He wants to guide you, teach you, and give you hope. Obey Him, trust Him, and love others. Pray with your heart. Study His Word. Help those around you. And never forget that even a child can do great things when they listen and follow Him. My journey is still growing, but I know one thing for sure. Jesus walks with me every day. And if you let Him, He will walk with you too.